So my name is Dzeneta Karabegovic. I'm a Ph.D. research fellow in the Politics and International Studies Department at the University of Warwick, and I work on the ERC Diasporas and Contested Sovereignty project. My Ph.D. research has to do with diaspora mobilization and transitional justice, and empirically I examine Bosnian diaspora mobilization in 3 different countries in Europe: Sweden, Germany, and France. And what I do is I develop a typology of diaspora mobilization based on 3 different factors: the citizenship regime, translocality, and grievance claims. Now with the citizenship regime, I'm really concerned about how open or closed the citizenship regime is. So when we examine Sweden, it's a sort of a more liberal country that has an easier path to citizenship. When we examine Germany, it's changed over the years, but it sort of falls somewhere in the middle. And when we examine France, it's a historically liberal country, but has had some fallback over the last few years. And what I find throughout my PhD research is that the co-occurrence of these 3 factors, citizenship regimes, translocality, and grievance claims, impact diaspora mobilization. Translocality has to do with how diaspora translate the relationships that they have in the homeland into the host land, and how in turn they utilize these when they mobilize. So this might be based on their local community, their neighborhood, their village, their city, or potentially even their region. Grievance claims are usually concerned with political participation, genocide commemoration or remembrance, or speak to larger issues of transitional justice. What I find throughout my research is that in Sweden, there is much more engaged diaspora mobilization. So the typology that I develop is really based on the co-occurrence of these 3 factors and how their co-occurrence leads to different types of mobilization. And so what I find in Sweden is that there is much more engaged diaspora mobilization. Engaged diaspora mobilization we can usually recognize because the diaspora collaborate with both homeland and host state actors in order to mobilize towards issues of transitional justice, as well as in Sweden, economic development, which oftentimes translates to sort of transitional justice goals on the long term. In Germany, what I find is that there's much more involved diaspora mobilization. And this doesn't necessarily mean that there's collaboration between the diaspora, the host state actors, and the homeland actors, but really that the diaspora is incorporating itself in the host state. And in Germany, oftentimes this has to do with multiculturalism and really incorporating the German political debates. In France, the population is much smaller, and what I find is that there's more inactive diaspora mobilization. This is due to a lack of translocal community. So what we find is that in France, there's much more individual diaspora mobilization rather than a community, or collaboration in a transnational way, so collaborating with Bosnians in Switzerland, for example. So there's several policy implications to this PhD research. The first one has really to do with incorporating diaspora in transitional justice agendas. And when we look at the migrant and refugee crisis today, and we understand that transitional justice has very much become part of peace building, we can look back at the Bosnian diaspora that was also conflict generated and examine how these actors incorporate transitional justice today in order to examine how potentially migrant and refugee populations today will impact transitional justice in their own homelands 20 years from now on. Second of all, the issue of translocality is quite important. Usually policy actors examine diaspora from a national perspective, top-down, and what this research finds is that it's really important how they interpret their own translocality in the ways that they mobilize.